Welcome to Scott Fox After 9. Today is the daily episode, but I did put out another one a little bit earlier on. It was a silent date update. A little note about that one, because it does involve music. I like to use some musical accompaniment to tell the story. It does get a copyright strike on YouTube. So if you're one of my YouTube listeners, you probably didn't even see that silent date update. You'll have to listen to that one on the apps if you want to hear it. And then coming up over the holidays, a silent date guy tell-all. He's going to come over to my place. We're going to get loaded, we're going to get high, and we're going to record an episode. And if you have questions for Silent Date Guy, you can send those to me at Scott Fox on air. That episode is actually being taped next week. It'll be out over the holidays. In this episode, it's going to be kind of a shorter one. There's not a ton going on. This is a time of year when a lot of politicians are starting to lay low, but there are a few things that I want to get on your radar. So first and foremost, I'm going to talk about what's happening tonight. It's not very often that the president of the United States asks the networks for airtime to do an address to the nation. But that's what President Trump is doing tonight. And when I think about what would he be talking about tonight, there's a couple things that come to mind. Number one, the Epstein files are going to get released on Friday at the latest. They might even come down today or tomorrow. Maybe he's trying to get out there and get all of his great accomplishments on the record before we see the Epstein files, because he, of course, would likely know what's in them. Maybe that's it. We also have 3I Atlas. That's that kind of comet, whatever it is that's out there in space. Friday, it makes its closest approach to Earth. Is President Trump going to talk about that and the fact that a lot of people believe it's not a comet, it's a spaceship? I'm leaning towards it's a comet. I mean, at first I thought maybe there's something there, but it's not even coming towards us right now. It's actually going away from us on the other side of the sun. It doesn't seem like, even if it is an alien craft, it's coming towards the Earth. So it could be that. It could be the Epstein files. It could be a lot of things. But I have a feeling it's really just going to be a victory lap. I was watching the White House press secretary, Carolyn Leavitt, yesterday on Fox News talking about the president's address to the nation. Give this a listen. It's about 45 seconds.
We greatly look forward to President Trump addressing the nation tomorrow night, 9 o'clock Eastern. I hope your audience will tune in, and Americans across the country will tune in to hear from their president as well about the historic accomplishments that he has garnered for our country over the past year. If you look at the security of our border, if you look at stopping Joe Biden's inflation right in its tracks, bringing down gas prices to the lowest level in 5 years, President Trump will be talking about what's to come. The best is truly yet to come, as he often says. And so he'll be addressing the country about all of his historic accomplishments over the past year, and maybe teasing some policy that will be coming in the new year as well as we head into this Christmas season.
Interesting. Okay, maybe some new policy. I wonder if this has to do with the tariffs, and I wonder if this has to do with the money that he has hinted Americans are going to be getting. He wants to divide up the tariff money that's come in so far and reward Americans. I'm hearing it could be close to $2,000 that every American is going to get because of tariff revenue. That, of course, would also put pressure on the Supreme Court to allow him to continue using tariffs. Lots of stuff going on in the U.S. political realm. Tonight, Donald Trump is going to address the nation at 9 p.m. Now, also coming up on this episode, you are going to hear from Candace Owens. You're going to hear from America's ambassador to Canada. And you're going to hear from Tiff Macklem, that son of a bitch, the governor of the Bank of Canada. He did a media availability, and it was primarily in French yesterday, but there were a few questions in English, and I want to try and play some of that for you. Tiff Macklem is the guy who's got the interest rates real high right now, much higher than they were when people took out their current mortgages. And Tiff is also the guy who said interest rates would remain low for the foreseeable future right before he went nuts, jacking up everybody's interest rates. Here is a little bit of Tiff Macklem speaking to the media yesterday.
I want to draw your attention to yesterday's inflation numbers. The headline inflation cooled and even the core measures cooled. But food inflation went up, and food inflation has this habit of increasing inflation expectations. How concerned you are that because of persistent rise in food inflation, inflation expectations could be de-anchored?
Well, Thank you for the question, and don't worry, Pramit. I'm very focused on inflation. My attention is that is certainly job one. So, what did we see in yesterday's inflation numbers? I mean, inflation, didn't change. It came out at 2.2, same as the previous month. As you indicated, food price inflation was up, and in fact, we've seen it move up the last few months. That appears to reflect a few things. We've seen bad weather has resulted in poor harvests in a number of countries. That's affecting food prices around the world. In the case of some goods, U.S. tariffs are having an impact. For example, coffee. A lot of coffee beans get imported to the United States, roasted and made into coffee that's then exported. So, that's an example of, even though we don't have tariffs on coffee from other countries, the fact that the U.S. does have an impact on us. And we've also seen some increases in shipping costs. Going forward, we are seeing some attenuation, some easing of those pressures. So our expectation is, I'm not predicting sort of next month, but over the next, number of months, we are expecting to see some easing of food price inflation. But, I'd say two things. One is, that's not going to be in every component. Beef prices, for example, are very high because ranchers reduce the size of their herds. That's not going to change quickly. And look, if you're a family that's already having difficulty putting food on the table, the fact that food price inflation might come down, that's not the same thing as food prices coming down, is probably cold comfort.
Well, I'm glad that dummy realizes it. Listen, Tiff Macklem there blaming the weather and the Americans and cattle ranchers for the high cost of food inflation. And yes, by the way, even though the overall inflation number was relatively flat, food inflation was way up again. And it's been going up every month and every year for a while now. How come he didn't mention the carbon tax? Why does Tiff Macklem never do it? Is it because he's beholden to Mark Carney and this Liberal government? How can you talk about the causes of food inflation and not mention the carbon tax? The industrial carbon tax is a tax on everything. If you tax the farmer and you tax the truck that takes the food from the farm to the grocery terminals, and you tax all of the industrial emitters, it raises the price for all of us. And he didn't say that. I think that's very disingenuous of Tiff Macklem to not do that, to leave that out. Now, he is right. It's little comfort for families right now that food inflation is going to cool a little bit. I don't know what he is basing that off of. What reason does he have to think that food inflation is going to cool? Tiff's only job is to keep inflation stable, and he has not done it. Food inflation has done nothing but go up. Tiff Macklem likes to do things like raise interest rates. It takes money out of the middle class's pocket. They can't spend as much, and then that forces prices to come down. That's how the Bank of Canada fights inflation. Well, he's been playing that game now for 5 years, and food inflation is still high. Why is that, and why won't he acknowledge the carbon tax? Very strange, if you ask me. Here's another question for the governor.
You just mentioned CUSMA compliance there, which segues well into my question. I'm wondering how big a risk the 2026 renegotiation of CUSMA is to our 2026 economy if that exemption is potentially something that could be affected by those renegotiations.
Well, I don't have any sort of inside insight into where those negotiations are, and I'm not going to handicap it. What I can tell you is certainly when you talk to businesses, what happens with the Canada, U.S., Mexico trade agreement is certainly on their mind. And if you look at the Canadian economy, what you see is that those hard hit sectors, employment is down sharply. Exports in those hard-hit sectors of the United States down very sharply. But when you look at the rest of the economy, the biggest effect you see is that the uncertainty around tariffs is really holding back business investment. And you can understand that. If you're a business, you're considering making a large investment, you want to know what the trade relationship is with the United States. You want to know how accessible the U.S. market is, what the pricing is going to look like. That's also spilling to some degree into hiring. We've actually seen some improvement in employment in recent months, but when we talk to companies, what we hear is that they're being cautious about their hiring. So I do think this uncertainty is having an impact on the Canadian economy, and clearing that uncertainty will be helpful for businesses to get on and invest and hire people.
Wow, he really twisted himself into knots trying to not answer that question. That is Bank of Canada Governor, that son of a bitch, Tiff Macklem, who is not answering the question. And it's a very simple one that I would think he should have been prepared to answer. Talk about the renegotiation of the Canada-USA-Mexico Free Trade Agreement. It comes up for renewal in 2026. President Trump has indicated he might not even bother renegotiating it. He might just let it expire. And then there's no free trade between Canada and the U.S. I think that's kind of where Governor Macklem was going, but I also realize he does not want to put panic into the markets. But I'd still like to know what he thinks. He's the governor of the Bank of Canada. He controls our monetary policy. What if we can't get a deal? What's Canada going to look like? Because I think Canadian businesses need to start preparing themselves for that possibility. We were supposed to have a deal by July 21st with the Americans. It is now December 17th, and we're not even talking. Trade talks are on hold. By the way, I don't speak French, so I can't say this 100% independently and confidently, but I'm led to believe that Mark Carney was doing a year-end interview in French, and he blamed Doug Ford for sabotaging the deal that he had done with Donald Trump. That's an interesting one, and I would love to hear what Doug Ford has to say. By the way, the first ministers and the prime minister are all meeting virtually today. So hopefully some good audio comes out of that, and I will have that for you tomorrow. One more from the governor of the Bank of Canada. This is Tiff Macklem.
Hey, Erika Kirk with Bloomberg. After the last renewal in 2021, the bank and government added a maximum sustainable employment clause to the framework. Just wanted to know if that's under review this time around, and can you share whether your thoughts have changed about whether it should be specifically outlined in the bank's mandate?
Well, first of all, I would not explain it the way you explained the last renewal. What I would say, and this is what I said, I remember is what I said at the press conference, I think the last renewal was really reflected continuity and clarity. I don't think there was a significant change. I think the renewal reflected in clearer terms what we've been doing for many years, and I think you've seen the whole time I've been governor. I've been doing my very best to be as clear as we can be. And I think the renewal is very clear. It states very clearly that our primary objective is price stability. It does also say that we will work to support maximum sustainable employment, but it's not directly observable, and at the end of the day, we have an inflation target, and it's critical that we keep inflation expectations well anchored, because one thing we know for sure is if we don't do that, nothing in the economy is going to work well. And that has certainly been our focus. I don't need to remind everybody inflation was a little over 8% in 2022. We raised rates very forcefully. And an important reason we did that was to keep inflation expectations well anchored. That worked, and that allowed us to get inflation back down without causing a recession, without causing a big increase in unemployment. So, yeah, to go back to the last agreement, I really think.
I'm going to pause the governor right there because I don't believe him. I just don't. And I don't think you do either. He again reiterated that his mandate is to keep prices stable by keeping inflation in check. He clearly didn't do that. He said it himself. Inflation got up to like 8% before they did anything. And then what did he do to bring inflation down? He bankrupted the middle class. He said it's not good for the economy when inflation is high. And frankly, I agree with him on that. But inflation got high and it remains high. You don't have to look around very far to see that the economy is not doing well. And I think that Tiff Macklem is a major source of the problem here, personally. Maybe some economists would disagree with me. I just think it was completely reckless what he did. How much different would things be in Canada right now if people had back all of the money that the banks took over the last, say, 4 years when he went nuts raising interest rates? Some people were paying thousands of dollars a month more than they needed to or than they would have if rates had stayed low. If people had that kind of money, don't you think things would be different? Don't you think this wouldn't be such a somber Christmas season that we're going into? Don't you think maybe a lot of the issues in our economy and a lot of the job losses could have been avoided if he hadn't taken all the money out of the middle class's pocket? I don't understand why he won't acknowledge his own role in all of this, because frankly, he did play a role in it, and I don't see how he did his job. That's just my opinion on the governor of the Bank of Canada, but I don't think he's very good at his job, and I think we should just disband the Bank of Canada. I really do. I hear from people all the time about the economy. Some of them very, very smart people whose opinion I trust a lot. And the two things I keep hearing from the people that I trust, they say to me, Scott, actually, there's three things they say. Scott, you've got to do this. Number one, make sure none of your bank accounts have more than $100,000 in it. Okay, well, no problem. I've got that covered. Your bank account is insured up to $100,000, so make sure none of your accounts have more than $100,000 in there. They also tell me, buy gold. And if you can't buy gold, buy silver and buy a lot of it, because it's only going to keep going up. It is a very stable investment right now. And the other one I hear a lot about is buy cryptocurrency. Buy it. It's very, very, you know what? I'm not going to say that. Tomorrow, I am recording an episode with someone who I consider an expert on the topic of cryptocurrency. And whether you are a seasoned investor or you're not even 100% sure what crypto is, you're going to really like this episode. It is going to come out next week sometime, likely on Boxing Day, maybe on the 27th, but I think that's going to be a great episode. Anyway, to put a bow on this, because I realize I'm going in circles now, they tell me three things. Make sure that you don't have more than $100K in each bank account or any bank account that you have. Make sure that you are buying gold or silver and invest in cryptocurrency. I don't know if that last one is good advice, but I'm certainly good with the other two pieces of advice. And I'll circle back and get you more info on the crypto situation after I do that interview tomorrow. That's going to be real good. I'm really looking forward to it. I hope you can check into that episode over the holidays. Let's switch gears here. Yesterday on Power and Politics, this was a show on the CBC. Jamil Jivani, who is a member of parliament for the Conservative Party. He sat down and he was doing an interview. And one of the things that came up is the fact that he is actually quite close with U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance. Jamil says he could be part of the solution here to try and work out a deal with the Americans. But Mark Carney refuses to work with any conservatives.
I have to ask you about J.D. Vance.
For sure.
What do you guys talk about do you talk to him regularly? What do you talk about?
I haven't talked to him a lot recently. When we have spoken, it's been about our fantasy football team, which we are going through the playoffs right now. So we did very well this season. But yeah, I mean, look, it's a difficult situation, just like the politics, right? Because if my party were in power, and I could actually reach out to people in Washington and say, okay, can we try to resolve some of this trade dispute or get a deal going? There's a role for me to play. With the Liberal Party in power, there's not an obvious way for me to inject myself into that conversation. Now, I will say I have offered Mark Carney to help, and I really do believe I could help. I would love it if Mark Carney said to me, look, we need a multi-partisan, all hands-on-deck approach. please go down to Washington. Here's the strategy and approach we're taking. See what you can do to help. I would love it if he asked me to do that. But out of respect for him as Prime Minister, I don't want to get involved. And frankly, we saw with the whole Doug Ford commercial debacle what happens when there's not a good strategy in place that is in the best interest of the country. Mark Carney is getting a new ambassador named. Maybe that means a new strategy. Maybe that means there's a way that I can help. And, my constituents in Bowmanville, Oshawa North would like me to do that. But at the end of the day, the Prime Minister has to make that decision, not me. So I would love to be able to talk to JD about how we can make things better for our economy. But I don't want to get involved in what Mark Carney's up to, and unless he tells me that's helpful to him.
Imagine that. I know he's from a different party, but I've also heard all parties say that all parties should work together. You've got a guy who doesn't just have an in at the White House. He went to school with the Vice President of the United States of America, and they have a fantasy football team together. They talk regularly. Why wouldn't Mark Carney call on Jamil Jivani, a Conservative MP, and say, hey, we could use a little bit of help here, just like Jamil said a few seconds ago when you heard that audio? Why wouldn't he do that other than blind partisanship? Can't do anything to give the Conservatives a win. I think that that's what's happening here. And it's too bad. We're missing out on another opportunity to try and make some progress and fix this situation with the Americans. Speaking of the Americans, the U.S. ambassador to Canada sat down and did an interview with Juno News. Juno News is great, by the way. People ask me all the time, where can I find other content that's similar to what you do, Scott? Juno has got some real good stuff. Just search for them on social or look for their website, Juno News. This is their reporter talking to the U.S. ambassador to Canada. Yikes. Listen to this one.
As you know, we've had layoffs now at Algoma Steel. The CEO of that company came out and said, well, it was largely due to the tariffs. But if we were close to a deal on steel and aluminum, could those layoffs have been prevented if the ads had not come out when they did? And the deal that was apparently on the table, you've spoken about this yourself, Ambassador, had come out and borne fruit, as it were.
I don't think there's any doubt that, everybody believed that we were close to a deal. The Canadians believed it. The Canadian negotiating team believed it. The American negotiating team, believed we were close to an agreement. But since the details of that agreement are not public, and since, even when you get to a deal, if you only have that far to go, you don't have a deal until everything is done. So it's possible that those jobs could have been saved. Bottom line is if we'd reached an agreement, we would have reached it on four or five critical areas. We would have been steel, aluminum. You do that, that has a big impact on autos. While automobile final production was not intended to be addressed in this agreement. If you're dealing with steel and aluminum, there's a lot of steel and aluminum in automobiles, and you would have moved forward, I think, on the auto issue as well. And then energy and uranium, it would have, as both the president and the prime minister had indicated, it would have put wins on the board. You put wins on the board, you develop a relationship that says, okay, let's go on to some of the other stuff and move on.
Wow. We were that close to a deal until that Doug Ford commercial came out. That's crazy. I mean, the Protect Ontario has a completely other meaning now. That's crazy to hear from the ambassador from America to Canada. Again, this is audio from Juno News, who sat down with the ambassador. Let me play just a little bit more of this interview. And if you want to hear the whole thing, just go to Juno News.
To your knowledge, did the president encourage some kind of change? Did he encourage Prime Minister Carney maybe to change things up a little bit, considering the fact that our talks basically have failed up to this point?
No, I don't. I'm not aware of anything like that at all. No, I mean, I think, it's pretty clear in terms of that we're getting close to an agreement. I think it's pretty clear, at least from the U.S. perspective. I won't say for the Canadian perspective, but from the U.S. perspective, it's pretty clear why negotiations broke off shortly before Thanksgiving.
But you're talking about the ads, of course, right?
Well, like I said, I think it's fairly obvious. I think the president made his feelings very, very clear I think I've made my feelings pretty clear, but good. I don't bring my personal feelings here. I represent, the position of the President of the United States and America's position. And yes, those ads were not very helpful to moving forward on the getting to a trade agreement. Something that would have benefited the people of America would also have been of great benefit, economic benefit to the people of Canada.
Yikes, he said it again. That ad. Holy cow. Becoming very, very problematic, but here's hoping cooler heads prevail. We really need to get a deal done with America before Mark Carney ties us any further to Europe, because I do not think that is where we should be placing our hopes and ambitions, is on Canada being a distant member of the European Union. We've got to find a way to figure this out with the Americans, and hopefully we can get something done with them very, very soon. I want to move on again. Yesterday, we learned more from Candace Owens about that meeting that she had with Erika Kirk. I'm only going to play 2 clips here. These are not particularly long, about a minute to a minute and a half each. Gives you a little more insight into what her and Erika Kirk talked about during their closed doors meeting.
What I got from the lawyer did not make me feel that Tyler Robinson shot Charlie Kirk. It did not make me feel confident that he didn't or did shoot Charlie Kirk. I was very surprised by this. He spoke a very long time. I asked, can you share with me what it is? And I said, when you share this with me, I will not say what that thing is. If we want to protect the integrity of the case, I'm not going to, if you say, we've got the footage of him taking a shot, I promise I won't say that to the audience, but I will communicate to them that you have something that is solid. And no, to the exact contrary, this guy effectively said, not effectively, he said that they have nothing but the affidavit. Okay, so what we have seen is what they have. What is being discussed publicly, this whole non-expert problem with well, you don't know. It's what you read, his messages that don't have any dates on it, Tyler Robinson writing out everything and the clean alibi. That's what they have. And what he explained to me was that that's the affidavit stage. That's where it's at. And then what takes place now is the investigation is ongoing, right? So right now they're looking for more information. And once investigators, they could very well have obviously footage. And that is why they might feel that, we're definitely gonna get this prosecution. But the reality is they don't actually share that information with the victim. They don't share that information with Erika. They don't, in this part of the process, they will not know what investigators have discovered. This is what the lawyer told me, until May.
Hold on a second here. Charlie Kirk was assassinated. His wife, who is trying to manage all of the fallout from all of this, including having to have this meeting with Candace Owens, her lawyer admits they haven't even seen all the evidence and they won't until May. Why would that evidence be kept from Erika Kirk and from the victim? Ever? I don't understand that. I would think that the victim should be looped in at every stage of the investigation wherever possible. She's not even going to know the truth until May, or at least know what the evidence is until May. That is shocking. What a weird system. By the way, she did make one more comment that I thought was strange. Again, this is Candace Owens talking about her meeting with Erika Kirk. This is about a minute long. Listen to this.
That knows that it's not worth living life that way. My whole spirit would be corrupted. I couldn't do it. I struggle with people that can do it. I struggle seeing people who have so obviously sold their souls on the internet. It's very frustrating to watch it. Central 848 writes, Candace, please look into the possibility that Charlie was electrocuted and that the hole in his neck was made by the currents passing through his necklace and out of his throat. The images of his charred hands are conclusive and compelling. Please, for the love of God, look into this. I did watch that video that Baron Coleman put together. First and foremost, I want to say Baron Coleman has done some incredible work, and I actually told him that we should get together and collaborate because I had watched a video of his where he was building on Camp Huachuca, and he made me notice some things. So then we started researching some other elements, and that's what we're going to move on to tomorrow. I can tell you definitively that's a weird camera angle. They do look charred in the photos that he showed, but I can tell you that his hands were not charred when he was buried. And so what you thought that people were oh, this was makeup and stuff. It was a very compelling theory. It just wasn't so. And I very much trust the person.
Okay, I'll leave that there, but basically what she's doing there is dispelling the rumor that Charlie Kirk was actually killed by electrocution remotely and that the hole in his neck came from an electrical current. She said that is simply not true, and It's amazing how many videos are going around of the shooting, of Charlie getting shot. Sorry, the actual shooting. I guess we haven't seen that video, and now I guess we won't until May. However, there is a lot of different people that have analyzed this video and come up with some wild theories about what may or may not have happened to Charlie Kirk. And that was one of them, is that he got electrocuted. That is Candace Owens saying that is likely not the case. One more thing that I want to mention here on this episode, and again, it's a slightly abbreviated episode, but there are 2 out today. There's a silent date update, so if you get some time, check that out as well. And if you want to hear the whole series of silent date episodes, they are in my feed going back to April. Just scan back through and find it. I want to read for you a statement from Alberta Premier Danielle Smith. I thought that this is an issue that we were a lot closer to being on the right side of. I believe, and this is just me, everybody, I believe that biological men should not be allowed to compete in sports against biological women. But there's many people who disagree with me. Actually, I don't even know if it's many or if it's just a few that are very loud about it. Some people feel that biological men who claim they are trans females should be allowed to compete in female categories. Well, Alberta has said no. They've said that's not going to happen, and they've even inserted the notwithstanding clause to protect that legislation so no court can overrule them. They don't want biological males competing in sports against biological females. They also don't want biological males in the same change rooms as females, and so on and so forth. Well, Skate Canada, the people who put out our figure skating teams at the Olympics and places like that, they've decided that because Alberta has done that, that they won't hold any more competitions in Alberta. They're going to try and punish Alberta and hold back some revenue that Skate Canada spends whenever they do a competition. They're going to hold that back from Alberta because they don't like what Premier Danielle Smith did. This is a sports organization that is now trying to make themselves political. Think whatever you want about that. I just want to read you what Danielle Smith replied yesterday to Skate Canada, because I think her words matter here. This is the response from Danielle Smith. Women and girls have the right to play competitive sports in a safe and fair environment against other biological females. This view is held by a vast majority of Albertans and Canadians. It's also common sense and common decency. Skate Canada's refusal to hold events in Alberta because we chose to protect women and girls in sport is disgraceful. We expect that they will apologize and adjust their policies once they realize they are not only compromising the fairness and safety of their athletes, but are also offside with the international community, including the International Olympic Committee, which is moving in the same direction as Alberta. And it's not just the IOC. There's many different sports bodies that have adopted the same policy because, like Danielle said, it's common sense. We don't let biological males compete against biological females in sports. We just don't do that. And I know that the trans movement has actively been trying to push that agenda, and it's not right. It's not right. There are biological advantages for those trans females, and there's a dangerous situation there, and I agree wholeheartedly with Alberta. So what do we do now with Skate Canada? Well, I know that the government is already trying to distance themselves from this. The parliamentary secretary for the sports, or the parliamentary secretary on sports, Adam Van Couverden is his name. He is, I don't even know what his position is, but I might run against him in the next election, though. I'll tell you that more about that in the new year. Anyway, I want to read for you the statement that Adam put out because he clearly does not want to deal with any of the fallout here. He says, and I quote, "Our government believes in a sports system that provides opportunities for all Canadians to participate and excel without discrimination, including the transgender community, which is disproportionately vulnerable, excluded, and marginalized. National sport organizations like Skate Canada operate independently from the government and make decisions with respect to the individual rights of athletes based on science and evidence specific to their sport. There must be a path forward for sport in Canada where the integrity and fairness of sport categories are preserved, while at the same time opportunity is promoted, and human rights are respected. The Honorable Adam Van Couverden, Secretary of State for Sport. Okay, there's his actual title. Two very different statements, right? You've got the government of Alberta that's going to stand up for women and girls in sports. And then you've got the Canadian government who absolutely will not. They will not. They comment about how marginalized and vulnerable and excluded the transgender community is. Not calling out Sport Canada, not saying we're going to revoke all of Skate Canada's funding. In fact, we're going to decertify Skate Canada as the governing body of skating in Canada, and we're going to create a whole new body. Who wants to step up and do it? We're accepting applications for a new governing body. That should have been step one and step two. Defund, appoint a whole new Skate Canada. That's what the government should have done. Instead, in a very wishy-washy statement, which could be read a lot of different ways, the government is going to do absolutely nothing but quietly push the trans agenda. And the trans community has an agenda. Trans females who are biological males want the exact same identical treatment as biological females. That's what they're looking for here. In sport, I don't know that we can allow that. I think it's a safety issue, and that's just one of the issues. I think there's a whole bunch of them there. Our government is not going to change it. The federal government is going to stand with Skate Canada. Alberta is going to stand with women and girls in sports. And frankly, I again applaud Premier Danielle Smith for doing the right thing, for applying common sense, and for keeping sport safe. I got to go, everybody. I'll be back tomorrow with another episode of Scott Fox After 9. I'll be talking about whatever President Trump is talking about tonight. Plus, we've got the Prime Minister and the First Ministers having a meeting. Whatever comes out of that, I'll have it for you right here tomorrow. Don't forget about that silent date update. There's 2 episodes out today. Check it out, and I will see you in less than 24 hours. And I leave you today with Pat James and the Whole Truth. Hey now. See you tomorrow. Oh,